Hey Paige, it's Dr. Scott. I have some feedback for you on your second essay, the draft that you sent in a little while ago. There's four major criteria that I'm looking at for this assignment. I'm looking at your thesis statement, how strong it is, how clearly it's stated, your ability to use visual details and a couple sources to support your thesis statement. I'm looking for organization and transitioning. An organization doesn't just mean you have ideas grouped together, but you have a reason for why you've located them in certain places in your essay. And then finally, I'm looking at how you integrate a couple sources into, or a couple quotes into your essay. So those are the things that I'm looking for. And I have up here on the screen your essay, and I'm just going to talk through a few of the comments that I have about your essay at this point. It seems like you're using sources in the first paragraph, but you're not really telling us where any of this information is coming from, and you do need to cite your sources. So if you learned that Dafford is from Lafayette, Louisiana, if that's coming from the documentary or if that's coming from the Scioto Historical Site, because they do have an article on the floodwall murals, you need to tell us where the information comes from. And I think it'd be helpful to actually include like research in the body paragraphs as well, when you can. So cite your sources, let us know where they come from, integrate them into your essay. There's a couple major issues to address in the revision, and the one that for me, like the weak part of the thesis statement, and I think this is the thesis statement here, it is pretty clear. But this leg of it, the unison and tragedy, that's the unison idea is definitely there in both murals. But you haven't sold me that the tragedy idea is not just even equally, that it's there in both murals. It's definitely there in the 37 flood, but the For Freedom mural, I'm having a hard time seeing that tragedy angle. And I wonder if tragedy is really the term to use here. And that's something that'll need some rethinking. These first sentences in your body paragraphs, some of them are helpful, and some of them just kind of, they say something, but they're not really suggesting how the paragraph is going to help you support the thesis statement. So the use of colors in both murals is mostly darker tones and colors. And that's telling me about the colors in the mural, but it's not telling me about whether or not, like how they're connected to this idea of unison or tragedy, and that does need to be addressed in the revision. You have a pretty cool eye for detail, and it's great to see some of your description here in places. There needs to be more instances in which you explain how those details equal the interpretation that you have of them. So here we have in the 1937 flood mural, the people are of a darker shade than a regular skin tone, and the whole setting seems to be covered with a shadow, except for places the people are helping one another or coming together. What's the point of those details? I think that they're good details, but it wasn't clear like how I was supposed to read them or understand them. And it wasn't clear how those details in the first half of that paragraph really helped you support that thesis statement that you have. Again, it felt like when you were talking about the tragedy angle of the For Freedom mural, it seemed like a stretch. And so like just saying that the dark colors show tragedy, that felt pretty weak. So again, the tragedy idea might be the thing that you might need to rethink that a little bit and find ways to kind of explain how the two murals are connected. I think the unity idea works. Like I think you have it there, but the tragedy idea is either going to need a lot more explanation or it's going to need to get tweaked a bit. Another larger issue to address is like how you've placed paragraphs. It wasn't clear to me why you began with this paragraph here as a body paragraph, like why that was the first paragraph, and it wasn't clear to me like why you were moving to this paragraph. Those connections were a little fuzzy to me, and that's a major issue that I'm looking for or a major criteria for this assignment. The purpose of the upcoming paragraph should also be clear really early in the paragraph. So right now we have the murals show that there is some form of unity, whether that be local community or around the world. Yep, that's a little bit connected to the thesis statement, but the body paragraphs are each of them are addressing how the murals do that. And here, is it the background? Is it colors? It wasn't clear to me. What is the focus of this paragraph? So that needs to be cleared up in the revision. I do think you have some really interesting ideas here. Mixture of men in the dark blues standing shows the unity of the world in times of crisis and war. I think that unity idea is pretty awesome. And I like that you're picking two very different murals. And I think that they can definitely work around that idea of unity. So consider that as something to consider that as an idea to revise that thesis statement, or to clarify that thesis statement. I mentioned earlier that early on in each paragraph there needs to be a clear sense of where the paragraph is going to go as far as supporting your thesis statement. Here you're just kind of telling us that there's you're describing the setting. You're not really kind of explaining where that paragraph is going to go. And there's a few instances in the paper where you'll provide some detail, like a circle-type shape of white seems to be around this image, and everything inside is bright than other parts of the murals. This conveys the unity of the people in the community of Portsmouth. And that one sentence there at the end, it really doesn't explain enough how these. It just doesn't explain enough how this equals this unity idea. A bit more explanation is going to be needed there. I do think you have a thing about pride here with this mural, which isn't really part of the thesis statement, but I do think that you have something here, and pride might be the other leg of your thesis statement. If you're looking for two things like unity and pride, you might have something there. You'll have to think about it. It's a little bit more of a stretch for the 37 flood wall mural or flood mural, but I think that is an easier pairing. That's an easier connection to make than the tragedy idea with the For Freedom mural. Has some solid detail in here, which I thought was really cool. I wasn't too sure if the troops in the Freedom mural, if the For Freedom mural, if that's tension that you're taking a look at, or if it's resolve or determination. It wasn't. Yeah, I think you're going to need more explanation and some description there to help you make that interpretation stick. Okay, and then here at the end of the paragraph, the surrounding feeling of each mural with the addition of facial expressions shows that these people empathize with each other and others in similar situations. And that's going to take a fair bit more explanation. I don't think the details that we have in this paragraph yet equal this kind of interpretation that you have. You're going to need more detail, and then you'll need to kind of explain it. Again, that's if you keep the current thesis statement. Revising that thesis statement a bit, I think you might have an argument that's going to be easier for you to support. Okay, so that's it as far as, and then ending paragraph with a quote. That's one of Stedman's annoyances. So there's a bit of work to do, but I think you have a solid foundation to build upon. I think the thesis statement needs some reconsideration. I think there are places where more explanation is needed of some of the details that you have. And as far as like the grouping of the paragraphs, like it needs to be, there needs to be a reason why you've arranged the paragraphs in the order that you have them. And then also there's some work needed with integrating the sources. But again, you have a solid starting point, and I'm happy to help out as you try to figure out where to go next with your revision. All right, I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes, and I will talk to you soon.